Hello, everybody. Uh,
Hello.
Glad
Hi.
that everybody could be with us today. It's such a beautiful day. Seeing the sun shining everywhere, so that's wonderful. Hopefully, people are staying out of the heat wherever you are. For those of you who don't know, my name is Father Fred. I am a Capuchin Franciscan in Detroit. I'm on the board for the National Catholic Partnership on Disability. I'd love to welcome you to this webinar today on resilience and recovery, nurturing mental wellness among Black, Indigenous, and people of color, the BIPOC community. So if you want to, the chat is enabled. So if you want to give a shout out, your name, where you're from, feel free to go ahead and put that into the chat. Also, if you have any questions for any of our panelists, feel free to go ahead and put that into the Q&A section. I will be checking that periodically through this presentation, and so feel free to just throw your questions there. Okay. Well, I'll just gonna give a just another minute for people to kind of get in and get settled, and then we'll go ahead and get started. Alrighty, well, why don't we start with a prayer in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Good and gracious God, we thank you for the blessing of this day and this time to be together to talk about this important topic, mental health within the BIPOC community. We ask that you watch over this webinar, watch over our time together, help us to grow together, to grow the kingdom of God here on earth, and help us to just be diligent and loving and caring to all those that we meet, and be able to accompany and help them in whatever way possible. And we just thank you so much for all that you do for us and the blessings that you bestow upon us every day. And we ask this all through Christ our Lord. Amen.
Amen.
Son, Holy Spirit. Well, as I said, my name is Father Fred, and I am with NCPD. I am on their board, Capuchin Franciscan in Detroit, and so happy to be with you. I'm also a licensed clinical social worker, and I'm so happy to have the panel that we have today. Claire, Christian, and Teresa, just wonderful individuals who have done doing just amazing work, and it's so I'm so happy to have them here. And so why don't I'm going to just ask that panelists, if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself and say a little bit about what you do.
Okay, I'll get us started here. My name's Christian, and I am in the Arlington Diocese in Virginia. And outside of my day job, I am a Catholic mental health and social justice advocate and work with an interfaith organization called Voice, which is Virginians organized for social justice movements in Virginia. And so, what I've been able to do is help with creating legislation for more behavioral health and mental health finances and resources coming into our states and our community, and working with partnerships with other organizations to make sure that we have resources to take care of this. Um, Personally, I manage a bipolar 1 disorder. And so I use my own personal experiences in managing my health to advocate for others who can't necessarily speak up for themselves.
Hi, my name is Teresa Rojososi. I am in Tuba City, Arizona, which is in the Navajo Reservation in the Gallup Diocese. Right now, I am the pastoral assistant to my own local parish. I served on numerous committees for Journeying Together, which is the USCCB. I do a lot of Catholic Climate Covenant social justice work, ecological spirituality work, and on the board for the National Catholic Partnership on Disability. My family, there is a history of mental health, and which isn't talked about I think just in general between minorities, it's very hush hush, especially within the Native American community. So that's always what I try to advocate, just to speak up about that. And yeah, thank you guys for joining us.
Hi, I'm Claire Chaniette. I'm here in Houston, Texas, member of the Galveston Houston Archdiocese. I'm a retired mental health professional. I've been retired. I worked in the field for 43 years and I've been retired 13. And I've been on NCPD, and it has been a very rewarding experience. And right now, what I'm enjoying most is working at the parish level with our mental health ministry.
Awesome. Well, thank you all of you for coming and taking time in your busy schedules to be with us today. It's so wonderful to hear from your different perspectives and to learn, which is what we're designed to do. And so I'm going to go ahead and start. This is for the panel. Feel free to answer individually. So what unique challenges do BIPOC individuals with disabilities face when navigating their faith and spirituality, and how can these challenges be addressed?
I think one is just being heard and being understood. I think for most, especially in my experience with mental health or talking to other people within my community about mental health, they really don't think of it or see it as something that's very serious. Like they just like, oh, just shrug it off. I think that's one thing, especially with Indigenous men, you know, uh, from what I've seen, it's more of you need to be strong, you need to be this, you need to be, those types of things. And I think navigating your faith, I think it's all the way around. It's just being seen and heard and being understood. I do think that some people still think as it's just something that you can get over. Oh, be stronger. Oh, you need to be mentally tough, grow a backbone kind of thing. Um, and I think how it can be, for me, it's just to be understood and heard. I think, and that's what I try to be for other people, if you need someone to talk to or anything, I'm there. Like, I'm not going to judge or anything. I think that's the main fear with a lot of people is just being judged and fear of not being understood.
Yes, I would agree with Teresa, and add to it that um, when a person of color has a mental health issue or crisis and they reach out for help, reaching out for help is a very hard step because a lot of times the example has not been set in their own families and in their own communities, in cultural communities, especially with people of color. And so they're stepping out sometimes on their own. In that case, if they're blessed to have a positive and open door relationship with their priest or their deacon, sometimes dealing with a mental health crisis or with poor mental health can be misconstrued as a spiritual illness. And so the advice that's given to them is from a spiritual nature. And certainly that helps prayer, saying the rosary, meditation, attending the mass, taking in the body of Christ through the Eucharist, and having a deep, intimate, supplicating prayer with Jesus in front of him. Those things most certainly help. But when there's a chemical imbalance, that's not a spiritual imbalance. And so sometimes when you don't have the resources and the knowledge and the team around you, the support system, you can be led down the wrong path and not get the help that you really need. That can be extremely discouraging, number one. Number two, it can be dangerous to yourself or to the other people that are around you. And three, it can make you question, especially if you're sick and you're dealing with a lot of unbalanced thoughts. It can make you question God's existence. It can make you question if you're important to God. And so it's very important when having these discussions and when reaching out for help that we separate our mental health from our spiritual health. And sometimes they're not always, it's not always the same thing. And I think that's a very unique situation for anyone, but especially for, people within the people of color community.
I also think that, it's understood that shame and stereotype and, stigma plays a major role, but I think that is highlighted even more in BIPOC communities through our history in this country. I think that you have to consider the historical trauma and the role and how we have always been taught to, and especially in my community, that you keep everything in. You don't share anything. You don't let people know what goes on. It was always a saying that what goes on in this house stays in this house, and we take it to being that we hide. We even hide from ourselves. And I think that cannot be discounted at all. We have to look at that. Some of that plays major roles. We still have to deal with the microaggressions in the workplace, in our school. What really is nothing but bullying, and we've dealt with this. And we have also, because there is a system that perpetrates this, I also believe there's a system that we play into it too, and that keeps us locked into our own role of not getting help. As a healthcare professional for the number of years I was in it, what I could see with my community, part of it, I was in the jail. Most of the time I was in community mental health, was that people of color did not want to be identified. They rather be called anything else but someone that was having struggles with mental health wellness. We would not, the medications, we were always misdiagnosed. We had a distrust of the system. We didn't have workers that looked like us, are culturally competent individuals. And we always didn't, we didn't want to take the medications. And with diagnosis, when you talk about African Americans only got 2 diagnoses: schizophrenia or a psychoaffective disorder, and you had to fight for those diagnoses. One of the things is that because medications we were not part of clinical studies and other things, the medicine didn't go with us. And it was like a one size fit all. And then being in a public healthcare system, we had to tell people that would want to incorporate their faith and talk about God and talk about spirituality. We always said, oh, those are grandiose delusions. We pushed them down for that, and they weren't permitted. So we fostered that in the healthcare system, that you can't talk about your spirituality. You can't talk about your feelings. And I think we created a greater problem.
Father Fred, I'd like to jump onto something that Claire said, and really she beautifully kind of hit the nail on the head from a healthcare perspective of the things that are so traumatizing and dealing with, especially if you happen to be seeking around the clock medical care. And that is a lot of times too, especially when you're dealing in your faith community, people of color, whether you're, Native American or you're African American or Hispanic American, you've dealt with so much generational trauma.
Right.
And your ancestors, your grandparents, your great grandparents, and beyond, they had no choice but to suffer in silence and just keep on keeping on, right? And that has an effect, right? It affects how you raise your children. It affects how you communicate. And some of our communities, people who are dealing with housing and food insecurity, people who are dealing with trying to meet their basic needs, the level of anxiety that causes, the level of depression that causes. And our grandparents and great grandparents didn't have the language and the tools to be able to address that or to deal with it. It was kind of, they were in a survival mode. Well, then you get down to our generation where Teresa and I are, and also as Claire is in, and you start saying, "No, wait a minute, we're going to pause things here. We're going to pause because there's something not right that we have to deal with." And so when you're the first person in your family to say, "Hey, I'm going to address the effects that civil rights had on our family. I'm going to address the effects that being missed for promotions or being harassed by police or being misdiagnosed and mistreated by public officials. I'm going to address the weight that put on the shoulders of my grandparents and my parents, and how that affected my upbringing, how that
Mhm.
affected my communication, how that's affected my self-talk."
Mhm.
When you're initially trying to address all of those things, one, it's very overwhelming. And you have to have someone who is culturally competent to guide you through that. My quick personal experience, I did not have a person of color as a psychologist or therapist for many years managing my illness. I finally found one, an African American woman who I love to death. And she helped me by digging into some of those cultural competencies that I wasn't even aware existed. And it was so healing after I did that work because it made me aware of what I was feeling and what I was dealing with. Wasn't made up in my head, it was a reality. And there were things that I needed to go back and work on, not just for myself, but for my ancestors. Right. And that's a whole nother theology of Sankova to go down another time. But to
Mm.
do that work, and it was healing, but I would not have had that leadership and that guidance to be able to do that had I not had an African American woman who could walk me through that, who could relate with me. And I think the same thing for our Hispanic brothers and sisters, for our Native American brothers and sisters, and etc. Having that cultural competency that Claire talked about, it is
Mhm.
life changing and life saving.
And one of the things that I want to add, because I know part of the questions is how can we address these challenges? And one of the biggest things that I feel, and I'm borrowing that from the indigenous population, are healing circles. One of the things that's very important is that all the time we talk about in mental health, and people want to understand the difference between healing and cure. But we've got to first to let all the things that we've internalized come out. We have to evaluate our own biases and objections and how we treat others. And one of the things that we've been doing lately is that we've been doing healing circles. First, what I have found very important, we have what is called a Back to the Village prayer walk.
Mhm.
And then following the prayer walk, we have armed our community. We're doing it in other churches and not just the Catholic Church, because I think this is so important, and mental health is not restricted to a denomination. And what we do, we kind of made, we've had healing circles followed by, we've had prayer walks followed by healing circles. For me, the most intimate thing you can do with a person is to pray together. And we usually set up stations, and we've been doing 4 stations, and at each station, we start off with people having prayer request forms, and we don't share them. You just put them there and you pray at the station, and then following that, we open it up to people to talk about, to follow up with the healing circle. And to differentiate a healing circle from the traditional support group is that we're not trying to resolve any issues. We're letting people just identify. It's about respect and mutuality, where they can say things out loud and talk, and without anyone commenting to them. We usually ask them to look at the candle, because we don't want them to see other people's faces when they're talking. We want them to talk from what's within them. And so we feel like these inner generational healing circles has done a lot for us to communicate, for men to be able to say things to to talk about things that they felt and couldn't say to their son. The thing for
Mhm.
Black women to say, stops trying to be the superwoman. We have to absorb everything. We can't show that we're unhappy because we're going to care. One of the things that we had to admit that, you know, we came out of Reconstruction, out of slavery, and was made a matriarchal household. African-American women. And we've got to stop feeding into that. We hate the role, we feed into it, and then it helps foster our becoming more dependent on the system.
How beautifully said. And I think, you know, it really points back to what Teresa was saying earlier about, you know, just giving voice
Yeah.
to the struggle, to the challenges. Kristen, you were right in the fact of like finding a therapist, a person of color who you can identify with, who can help you to walk through you know, the challenges, and that's so important. And it just brings me to the thought of like, you know, what can we do really to help to raise these voices and help to let people within the BIPOC community know that like what you say and who you are is fully valued, and you are welcome and included in especially within the church, within communities, because Claire, like you said, religion, this is a struggle across all religions. It is not something that is unique to the Catholic Church or Christian communities or anything like that. This is something that mental health goes across humanity. And so what can we do? How can we support people to say, like, you know, stand up, speak out, speak your truth, speak the wisdom of your experience?
I think
I
all,
think, oh, go ahead.
no, ma'am, I'm gonna,
No, I think Christian hit it, you know, when he had said, you know, representation too also plays a big part of it, on how he, you know, with his with his therapist being a minority, a woman. And I think that also plays onto it, because you're more comfortable sharing things with someone of your own. Because with me, I've noticed with a lot of Native Americans, they don't share unless with other people who aren't Native American, or who not are in, you know, a minority, because it's not their story to know, or it's none of their business kind of thing. And I think for me, it's been more of, I don't know if I can share this with you because you can't relate, and more of how you grew up, or like how you just shared experiences, I think. And for me, I've always been more about representation, you know, seeing myself in other people who are telling me, you know, what's wrong with me or what I should do or anything like that. And for me, it's always been like, okay, like, you don't look like me, you know, you don't share some of the same experiences. So it's kind of, for me personally, is more just representation. And I know Christian talked about that earlier. So
It's like your blues is not my blues. You know, we started
Mhm.
this month, and I really want to say this. Before being invited to participate on the partnership, I felt that there was no way to express my voice within the community, within my church community. And and one of the first things when we talked about, they asked about different things that we were going to do. And I talked about Minority Mental Health Month. At that time, that's what it was called, the BB Campbell Minority. And they readily jumped on it, because one of the things that must be considered, you know, and I think BB says it's best, you know, African Americans know racism, but we don't know really what the cause is, why we just continue to do some of the things. She says that race and redemption and healing, that should be our thing. And that's what I agree with.
I think, you know, the steps too that could be taken, we've talked about representation. I think that's so important. I think the Partnership on Disability has done that, which is very impressive. And I think that we can do that in our in our own churches and communities. I am always amazed when I walk into a room, no matter if it's in or outside of the church, and I notice that I'm the only person of color and I'm the only minority, and there's not as large as the Hispanic apostolate is in the United States of America. I don't see one of our brothers and sisters of Hispanic origin. I don't see one of our brothers and sisters that's Asian, or I don't see a woman in the room. And I always question, am I the only person that sees this? So I think for all of us in leadership, regardless of whether we identify as a person of color or not, all of us in leadership within the church have a duty and responsibility to make sure that our brother and our sister is at the table. That's how we can work to amplify voices. And if someone's missing or someone's not there, get permission to reach out and invite someone, make the recommendation, speak up and say something. And I know that sometimes, especially within the communities of people of color, it's very hard for us, even when we have said to ourselves, I don't feel well and my mental health is not okay and I need to get help. And let's say we talk to a doctor, we see a therapist, we start taking a medication routine. We may be doing that, but we may not be comfortable to share that with others. And I think that's okay because we're all on our own healing journey. But if you are comfortable to encourage someone, if you are comfortable to speak up, your voice is needed. So any person who is on this call today that is a young person or a person of color who is taking the steps to address their mental wellness and to be healthy, and they're made a commitment to themselves and they feel strong enough to be an advocate or speak out for others, your voice matters. People need to hear what it's like. I always talk about, I've been hospitalized a couple of times for my medication management adjustment. I hate it. I absolutely hate it. Not because I don't want to be well, not because I don't want to have the proper medication. It is what I know I'm going to have to contend with from the doctors, from the nurses, how I'm going to be treated, how I'm going to be spoken to. It makes me feel like I'm a third-class citizen. It makes me feel like I'm stupid and I'm being talked to like I'm an uneducated person. And so it discourages me sometimes, even when I know I need to go in for a little reset. It is discouraging to me because I don't want to be treated like that. And when I say that, especially when I'm speaking to medical professionals, I've had so many people come up to me and say, we never recognized that, or we didn't know, or we weren't aware that we were treating everyone the same and not looking at it as an individual, and how they would have never known that if I didn't speak up. And so I encourage all of us to use our voice and to speak up, to advocate for ourselves and advocate for our brothers and sisters who can't speak up for themselves.
And I think that's very important because, one of the things that in mental health ministry, what we're helping people, we're not just accompanying them, we're their companion, but we're helping them to learn to be their best own advocate, to advocate for themselves. And to be very honest, let me back up and be personal about this. When I first was invited to the council, the first day I went to the meeting, there was no one else that looked like me. So I immediately said, I'm here as the Black face, the token. So I spent most of that first year just listening to see how genuine. I had opinions and thoughts. I want to thank Chris Miller, who was encouraging. And there were several, and Deacon Ed and other people, and Judy, that encouraged me. I was encouraged to come to the council by Charlene, but it took it because of my own internal stuff and what I had experienced. I knew that the limit and what I could say, and I no longer feel that way. And one of the things that's very important is for me to demonstrate all the time that others do not have to feel that way. We don't have to keep internalizing everything.
speak up. That's wonderful. And I think something that Kristen, that you said that I think is really important. We often ask like who's at the table, but I think the more important question that we should always be asking ourselves is who's not at the table, who's not being represented, who's not being understood, who's not in the at the table. And I think that's so important to constantly remember and constantly be asking yourself, okay, who are we missing? Who are we not giving that avenue to speak?
And one of the things that I feel very strongly about, not to have a history lesson, but in the United States of America, Native Americans and African Americans have bore the brunt of racism, especially systematic racism. Um, and it's been a hard fight, right? And it's a fight that many of us are still
Still
working,
fighting.
still fighting. That
Oh,
that causes so much trauma that we have to deal with, we have to put up with, we have to work through. That, and that's outside of like having a chemical imbalance or anything like that. But I'm building to this. We have brothers and sisters who are here from the Middle East, from Southeast Asia, and from south of the border and the Caribbean, south of our border and the Caribbeans, who are now dealing with a whole nother level of racism, albeit systematic, but also just cultural. And so then there's the pressure as an African American or as a Native American to not only deal with our own issues and our own health, but to be allies and to be our brother and sister's keeper for our, Hispanic brothers and sisters, some of them who are dealing with DACA issues or dealing with racism, or being yelled at in public to speak English. I mean, these things have a traumatic impact on our brothers and sisters' mental health. And so there's so much happening in our world. And we're not even going to get to gun violence. I mean, that's a whole nother, that's tapping into something else. But being cognizant and being aware of these things, that this stuff that's happening every day, and some of us may live in privileged circumstances or communities, or maybe in privileged cultural groups where this is not a thing, this doesn't affect us on a daily basis. We're looking out for our brothers and sisters who are dealing with this, and for everyone to know that they're not alone. One of the things that I met Teresa on, and we became very good friends, was called Journeying Together. And it was taking young adults from every cultural family within the United States and really working and journeying together, holding each other's hands, getting through some really tough work. One of the things that it made me aware of is how powerful I am, how powerful my experiences in life and my family stories and my history has made me, but that power has given me a responsibility. It's given me a responsibility to reach out across the aisle, to reach out to my Hispanic brothers and sisters, to reach out to my Asian brothers and sisters and journey with them and encourage them as they're navigating our cultural system in the United States that unfortunately is steeped in racism. And so all of that affects not just their mental health, but my mental health. And, doing the work of a mental health advocate taxes your mental health. And so just having all of that, there's all these avenues, and it just shows that each and every one of us play a role into making sure that everyone can achieve wellness.
Mhm.
Beautifully said. Thank you. Yeah, and that's such great work with the young adults, because I mean I think that's one of the avenues that I think we can really dive into is reaching out to the young adults to bring voice to their struggle, bring voice to their challenges, and bring in their family stories and bring in the challenges that they're facing as a culture. I work with a group of young adults here in the city of Detroit, and I'm always as amazed of the wisdom that I can get from them, I think sometimes I learn more from them than they learn from me, because there's so much wisdom and there's so much insight that they share with us, and so it's great to be able to give voice to the young adult. Wonderful. What other ways do you think that, we as a community can create opportunities for the BIPOC community to really to share their stories? Like, what do you think that we can do as a Christian community, as a Catholic community, to really give a space for them to talk?
This is a good start, but I would like to see if the council could at least once a year have an open forum. There's a lot going on in the archdiocese, our diocese, and our parishes, and I think information, how powerful should flow both ways, and I think it would be very important if we would sometime highlight what's going on there, and to give, that's more people talking, that's people that's talking, seeing someone that they know talk about it, and all that. So I would like to see that happen. I would also like to see that if once a year we didn't have something like a retreat, where we all pray together. I think the most intimate thing you can do with anybody is praying with them. I say that over and over, where we can sit and share, we can do self-reflection, we can review, look at our own, look what we bring to the table and how some of our ideas are formulated. I think that it should be done by Zoom, that it should be half a day for a couple hours for 2 days. And we even have breakout groups where we play games and things, because you learn a lot and you share a lot. You let people see who you are through play. So I think those kinds of things that we can promote. I also think that in doing this work, we need to stay relevant. So hearing from youth, hearing from other people, that there should be some kind of mechanism that we have when we talk to parish leaders and diocese leaders. What else is that you need? What do you see happening? Instead of creating things in a vacuum of what we think someone needs.
I agree.
I think another part that we can do as a community and as a church is really encourage and then give them the tools necessary for our priest to be able to have these conversations. I feel very passionate about how we are training and how we are setting up seminarians to go and be priest. And there's a lot of theology and philosophy coursework that's very important. We want our priests to know their stuff, right? But there's also things that are missing. There's cultural competency that's missing. There's some basic counseling and communication and crisis intervention courses and trainings that we can give to our priests and our deacons. They're the front line. Right? They're who, even people who won't necessarily go and talk to a doctor or seek out a therapist, they're going to talk to their priest, right? They're going to go to their deacon. And are our priests and are our deacons, are they qualified? Have we given them the tools and the resources to have these conversations? I'm not saying that every priest and deacon needs to have a master's degree in therapy and counseling, but there are some basic things that we can do in their formation as seminarians, to give them the tools to have empathy when they're speaking with someone that maybe they don't understand their culture. Maybe they don't understand the struggles that that community has dealt with, but they can be empathetic, they can be loving, and they can guide them to the right resources. They can guide them to the right things to do so that they're physically, mentally, and spiritually safe. That would make a major difference in our church. That would make a major difference in the trust of people in going. So I think that's number one thing. I think that, as our council, which I'm brand new on, and I'm looking forward to working with everyone, I think that's one of the things we can do is really train our seminarians, give them the tools and resources to have that, give our priests and deacons the tools and resources. And then outside of that, I wrote down in my notes here, having intergenerational healing circles, just a
Yes.
place of conversation. I think that it would be beautiful to see that available in almost in every parish, for people who want to show up, for people who need that. I love the Bible, so Teresa's going to laugh at me because I'm always quoting something. But the scriptures tell us that when we come to Christ in the gospel and we accept Him, that He will give us mother and father, brother and sisters. Because sometimes some of us, we give up those things for the truth. We give up those things to be Christians, to follow Jesus, to live our life as true Catholic Christians. And so many of us are longing and hungering for that mentorship, for that relationship, rather it be with a father figure or a mother figure, or rather it be, I know some dear people who have lost children to suicide and have expressed to me how healing it is when they're able to connect with younger people who would have been their children or their grandchild's age. That is a spiritual family. And when we do that, that creates such a bond and such a closeness. That's real, that's tight, right? That's tight in our churches. That's a strong church. That's a strong parish. And so I love the idea, and I'm going to be promoting it from the rooftop. Intergenerational healing circles at all parishes, once a month we're going to get together, if it's coffee, if it's tea, if it's soda pop, whatever, and we
Food.
can sit
Always
around,
bring food.
we
Well,
bring
we-
your food, and I just
we
love
don't-
that so much.
On the parish level, we have every fourth Sunday what is called coffee, cake, and mental wellness. And
See?
we sit around, and our parish priest supported this. We sit around and we talk about those things. We just came off of Men's Health Month, and we talked a lot about men and what they can't say and how they hide and show emotions and stuff. And it
Mhm.
was wonderful to hear men, older men talk to younger men and of what is a man, and that kind of.
Yeah.
So those things are wonderful. I do know that the Catholic Partnership I know that the Association of Catholic Mental Health Ministers have made some inruns by doing some training as seminaries. Not all over, but they have been invited into a few. I like the organization because they accepted our ministry, because I was more concerned, not just about my parish, but about my community, accepted us as an ecumenical ministry under the umbrella of our Mother of Mercy Catholic Church. So with those things, we had, there's some things that are happening. And if I had taken my first idea of say, oh no, I just don't want to be bothered, I'm not going to get on this, I want to be on something that's going to do some real work, I wouldn't have been able to see this happen.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I think so 2 points I want to make is one, I mean, I think this is NCPD has been doing some really great work about creating courses that people can take on disability ministry, and how we as a church can react to and engage in the disability community. And I think that this opens up an avenue to talk about one within the BIPOC community. Have a how do you minister, how do you accompany, how do you walk with individuals from the BIPOC community. And then the other thing is like you were talking about intergenerational healing circles and prayer circles. I was also thinking, I just recently, well, not recently, 2 years ago, moved from Chicago. And one thing that I noticed in Chicago within a lot of the communities is you would have the Spanish Mass and then you would have the English Mass. And it was like two completely different communities. They never talked to each other. They never, they never interacted with each other. It was, the Spanish Mass and the English Mass. And what I would have loved to see is intercultural, healing circles coming together where the communities could be as one. Like, let's incorporate. We do in our province. I'm very blessed. we have quite a wide variety of cultures represented: Vietnamese, Mexican, Indian, and just a lot of other. And so our liturgies often are in multiple languages. We're not just, I mean, it's obviously primarily in English, but then the music and the proclamation of the word, we'll have it in Vietnamese, or we'll have it in Tamil, we'll have it in English or Spanish, and just really trying to incorporate as much of the representation of culture as we can. And Claire, I think those were some really great ideas, and I'm looking forward to seeing those on the next CMIW agenda in ways of how we can do that. So Deacon Ronnie will hopefully get an email from you later today about some of those ideas, because I think it's great, and I think the three of you have the experience, you have the lived experience, and you have the professional experience to really to help us to bring voice to the BIPOC community. And so thank you for that. Anybody who is listening, feel free to ask any questions in the Q&A section right next to the chat box. You can go ahead and throw your questions in there if you have any. Or you can always, if you can't think of it, if you're watching this later, because this will be recorded and put onto our website, ncpd.org. If you have any questions, feel free to shoot us an email, and we'd be happy to send it to the group or to whoever to get a answer for you, because NCPD is here to support you in whatever way we can. We're really here to answer questions. And Claire, I love that you said it earlier about an open forum. There was actually a discussion recently with Charlene and some other individuals about creating a open forum conversation where people can just come with their questions. Here's what I'm here as, I'm a priest, or I'm a diocesan leader, or I'm a vocation director, or whatever. Here's what I'm working on. Here's my challenge. How do I face it? And getting professionals in there to answer those questions, and to kind of go by case, almost like in social work we would call it like a case consultation, right? Really getting them connected with the professionals. So wonderful. So we just have a few more minutes left, about 10 more minutes left of the webinar today. And is there anything that hasn't been said that you guys would like to say, that you would like to express to the community?
I'd have one thing. I think it's important for all of us that are working in the mental health space, whether we're advocates or we're ministry leads, to know what services are available in our communities, to know what behavioral health clinics there are, to know if there's a sliding fee schedule, if there's a place for people without health insurance, is there a place for people who are housing insecure, all of those things. Typically, they don't change that often, so you can get a little research together and just have it available at our parish here in Alexandria, Virginia. We have a resource folder, because sometimes people in the community reach out and they need help, or they're not doing well. And so, just have that available. Have your resources in your community, so that if someone's in crisis, it can be very, very damaging to have someone who's in a mental health crisis, and then we just call 911 because we don't know what else to do. And then you get an untrained officer to come out. And so some municipalities and communities, they have trained crisis intervention officers. They have therapists and counselors who are on staff that can come out and assess the situation. So I just think it's important for all of us, if we can, especially people who work in parish ministry, to make sure that every organization just knows what resources are available in their community.
And you can use your diocese mental Ministry on Disability is a big help to put all that together. I have to thank and acknowledge Melissa Garcia Alvarez at our Archdiocese, who helped get us information and put things together for us for the coffee cake and a mental wellness Sunday. And I have found that as a wonderful resource of kind of communicating with what's going on. We have a community dialogue that is every month, and we have opportunity to share these kinds of things. So, you know, there's stuff out there together. And I think one of the things that NCPD can do is pull these things together.
Wonderful. Teresa?
I'm sorry.
Any last, we do have a question, so I don't know if.
I think that's what I was reading. I'm like, oh, do we have a question?
Oh,
So
yeah,
that's
we do,
what I was
we do
reading.
have a
I
question.
was like,
yes,
wait, do we
so-
have a question? So I was like, that's what I was like, okay, then
No,
you caught me off
you're
guard.
good.
No, sorry.
So the question is how to start or how to bring intergenerational and intercultural healing in our ministries or in our parishes. So how would we even start that, or what is the process?
Well, let me tell you how we did it. We got with our local NAMI. We requested Healing Circle facilitator training. Our ministry went through that. We wrote up our plan. One of the things, it was based on the idea of, you know, when people say, Claire, you know, how do you feel as being a descendant of slaves? And it started with reframing that question. I'm not a descendant of slaves. I'm a descendant of individuals that were enslaved. And that's a different way of looking and validating me. So starting with that concept, we put everything in writing. We talked about it. We talked about what we wanted to see in the circle, the respect, the mutuality, and those different things. And I would be happy to send what we're using as our write-up to anyone that's to you, if anyone wanted to get that information. But we now have an official MOU with NAMI, and we've made it part of their Sharing Hope program. Hopefully we've been asked to present this, and I haven't had time to put it together, to NAMI, Texas for their conference in October, and we have a deadline till the 1st. So people are taking interest in it.
Wonderful.
I love that. I love the fact that Claire said too, getting facilitator training. It's so important. You know, we have our way that we like to communicate. And of course, we think we're right in that form of communication. However, training is very important because we don't want to have this beautiful, well-meaning idea and then unintentionally trigger or re-traumatize someone. So I think having training is super.
Training is essential. I can't tell you the number of trainings that we have been through for our ministry because it's very important. It's you know, just like the doctor, you don't want to do more damage, you know, no harm. So yes.
And then, Father, I'm going to apologize in advance for what I'm about to say.
Oh.
But, you know, sometimes we are very blessed and we have a pastor who is engaged and aware and ready to go with it. And sometimes that's not the case. I'll tell you what a good mentor of mine told me: you need your priest for the sacraments. You need your priest for the sacraments.
Yes.
But to have an intergenerational, intercultural healing, that is a ministry that if you have prayerfully considered it and the Holy Spirit has put that on your heart, you can do it. If you're meeting at the Starbucks down the street, or you rent a room at the public library, or you do it in somebody's living room. So, you know, some of us, we can go right to our pastors and priests and they'll say, yep, go right ahead, do what you got to do. Let me know what you need. I support you fully. Some other people may have some challenges, and that is okay. You can still carry out God's will in this ministry, and you can pray for the Holy Spirit, and it will guide you and direct you. You can get training and you can make this happen. So don't let a small hiccup, or if there is something in the way for people, don't let it discourage you to give up. You know, you need your priest for your sacraments, and there are things that by the baptism that you experience and the confirmation that you got, you can go out and minister as well.
And it just goes back, and it literally just goes back to what Christian was saying, the training with these priests and, you know, the seminarians. I think for me, I really love the work that's coming out of Bishop Dolan out of Phoenix. You know, he created a whole new, you know, building, mental health building for the Diocese of Phoenix. And it made me so excited because sometimes our diocese mimics the Diocese of Phoenix. And so I've learned, you know, that they're actually thinking of creating a mental health building or that curriculum into the Diocese of Gallup, which is exciting because, you know, for me, it's also gonna not only help Catholics, but it's also gonna help Native American Catholics on here, especially with the trauma of boarding schools, of, you know, that, you know, of that. And then also too, I just think of it as just training. You know, you need to have that training, and it just goes back to what Christian was saying about that. Yeah, you might have this push-pull with a priest, but if they have this training, you know, it'll be easier for them to understand, like, this is a need. I feel like that's what's lacking, is that there's no I don't know how to put it, but that this is a need in our community, in our church community, in our faith community, a need to know that people need this outlet. And that's what I think is a big, big help, is the training.
100%, I agree with you. I think as somebody who's gone through seminary training, I mean, I'm a licensed clinical social worker, so I'm a little bit special in the sense that I have a separate master's. But you're right that there's not enough. In my opinion, I don't think there's enough conversation that's happening. I don't think there's enough you know, training that's happening. I mean, I think there's so many great organizations out there. Deacon Ed's group, who does a lot of mental health training, is really wonderful. And then obviously NCPD and a lot of their work on training. But I think the seminarians are really what's important, because it's so much better. Like you said, Christian, you can go ahead and do it, but it's so much better when you have your priest on your side, and who is willing to say, like, okay, you can use the you know, here's some resources, how can I help you, you know, here's some space. You know, because I think it speaks volumes. And so it's important to try to get priest on board as much as we can. Well, thank you everybody for
theme. Let me just say, this year's
Sure.
theme for Black Month says it all: culture, community, and connection. That says it all. It wraps it up.
Well, thank you everybody for being here, especially Teresa, Kristen, and Claire, for being here and talking with us and sharing your wealth and your knowledge and your story. It's been so wonderful. And thank you all who are watching live, and those who will be watching later. We just really appreciate you coming out and listening to us and giving us a chance to talk with you. And so I'm just gonna offer a quick blessing as we go. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Amen.
Good and gracious God, we just thank you for today, this time together to talk about mental health challenges within the BIPOC communities. And we just ask that you continue to bless us, Lord, to continue to watch over us and continue to guide us on our journeys as we go through life, and as we minister to those who are in need. And we ask that you bless all of us in the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Thank you so much, everybody, and have a blessed day.
Thank you all.
Thank you, guys.
Bye.